Hello friends, thank you for joining me today. So if my setup sounds a little different, looks a little different, it's because I got a new camera, well, new to me, from my dad recently, and I'm still trying to figure out how everything works. I have a bunch of different lenses now. I finally have a viewfinder, which is amazing, but basically I'm still trying to figure out how everything works, so I apologize if the audio quality might actually be a little bit not as good as my other videos. I don't have a separate microphone. All I have is the camera, so I'm just trying to figure everything out. But anyways, thank you for bearing with me, and let's go ahead and jump into this video. So the Memoirs of Lady Trent are a 5-book fantasy series set in a world very similar to our 19th century. They chronicle the adventures of Isabella Camhurst, who eventually becomes known as the Lady Trent, who is a very scientifically minded woman whose passion is the study of dragon naturalism, and she's born during a time where science is really kind of looked upon as the domain of men, and she spends her life researching dragons and having to navigate political and social waters to fight for her beliefs and her right to be recognized for her contributions to the world of academia. So I love dragons. Always have loved dragons. Dragons were practically my whole aesthetic in high school. I had dragon books, dragon posters, dragon clothing, dragon jewelry, dragon decor, you name it, I was all about it. And what initially drew my attention to this series was the beautiful cover illustrated by Todd Lockwood. It just looks like vintage and old and professional, and I had never heard of the series before. I just saw it sitting on the shelf of a local bookstore several years ago one day. And when I finally got around to reading it, I was so excited about it. So, as the name of the series implies, it's a first-person, past-tense retelling of the life of Isabella Camhurst and her adventures, written by the woman herself in her old age. And in this alternate world, dragons they're exotic creatures, but not much different than the way that, say, a Siberian tiger is exotic or an elephant is exotic. Dragons are part of the animal kingdom in this world, but were not well understood until Isabella came along and decided to dedicate her life to the study of them. Now, if you're looking for a fantasy series that's full of magic and swords and quests, fire-breathing behemoths, then you're not going to find it in this series. So, as I said before, it takes place in a world that's basically very similar to ours, and takes a very clinical and scientific approach to these hypothetical dragons that is unlike anything that I've read in fantasy before. You read this series and you just can honestly believe that dragons can exist somewhere, the way that this book tackles it. And really, the main substance of the series is the relationships between the people that Isabella meets and works with from all around this world, and the ways that the different people and cultures are unique and important and valuable and different. And the dragons are, of course, an important driving force to the plot. The plot circles around them, but I think readers might be a little surprised at how infrequently the dragons actually appear in each book. More often than not, the dangers and challenges that Isabella faces aren't from the dragons, but from other humans, the environment, or, from inside her own moral and personal failings and struggles. But don't let this turn you off from the series. It is so well written and fun. I just couldn't get enough of it. Isabella is one of my new favorite female protagonists in literature. She's smart, she's funny, and she's just unapologetically herself. Her passions lie outside of what is seen in her society as the norm and socially acceptable for women, and despite adversity and tragedy, she perseveres and is determined to be seen and respected as a scholar on her own merit. And over the course of 5 books, you get to watch her journey from a teenager into a mature woman in her 40s and beyond. And her triumphs are so exciting to read about. This is one of those series that you really find yourself rooting for the protagonist, and in each book she travels to a different place, and each place she travels to is similar in climate to a place in our own world. So for instance, like the cold mountains of Russia, the plains and swamps of Africa, and the deserts of the Middle East. And there's just so much variety of setting and dragons, and it's just really cool to be taken to all these different places and read about these different cultures. So if you read the first book and aren't a big fan of it, whether it be because of the writing style, which is very formal and proper English-like, because it's written in the voice of a snarky old woman, and it did take a little time for me to get used to that, or maybe the lack of fantastical elements, or maybe the detail in which the book goes to describe setting and the expedition. So yeah, if you're not a big fan of the first book, then to be honest, you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of the series. Each book is pretty self-contained, aside from a few connecting threads, which because each book takes place in a different country and focuses on different dragons and cultures, but the formula of each book is very similar. I adored it, absolutely loved it, but I think some readers just might find that it's not fantastic enough for them, and each book is also not super fantastical. So if you're not really into the way the first book is set up, then you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of the series either. And everything wraps up quite nicely with the final book, and it went in a direction that some will probably be able to predict, but it was still really cool and a pleasure to watch unfold, and I was left very happy and satisfied when I finally closed the cover on the last book. And as I said, each book is really its own adventure, but there are several common threads and plots that carry on throughout and drive Isabella's expeditions and research. So like, it isn't an anthology where you can just like choose one to read. You should go in order because there are references to stuff that happens in the other books. So I'll put the ratings I gave each book on the screen. I really enjoyed them all, and I don't feel any shame in rating this series as a whole 5 stars. I loved it, and I would absolutely recommend checking out the first book, A Natural History of Dragons. It's like historical fantasy fiction, and I feel like lots of people with different tastes could enjoy this, even people who don't generally delve into fantasy. And plus, the books are just so beautiful looking. So I own the hardcover editions of all 5 of the books. The other 4 are up here, which have deckled edges, and so what's kind of cool is each of the books, it's kind of hard to see, but the actual words in each of the books the ink is actually a different color based on kind of the theme. So this is it looks kind of like olive green in color, if you can kind of see that. But for instance, this one, the 3rd book, The Voyage of the Basilisk, the text is blue because it takes place on the open sea, and each of the books, the ink is kind of that color that corresponds with the cover art. So it's really fun, and Todd Lockwood is the artist who did the art for the cover, and he also does several illustrations within each book, which really just adds to the immersion of everything. So here I found some artwork from the 3rd book, and you can really see the blue ink here, but it just really adds to the immersion of the story, and as I said, you just can really believe that these dragons do exist somewhere. So there you have it. That's kind of my overall review of the Memoirs of Lady Trent. I loved the series. I highly recommend that anyone who is even remotely interested checks out the first book. It's a very good test of if you're going to enjoy the rest of the series or not. I think you will if you really enjoy the first book. If you don't enjoy the first book and the way it's written, then you're not going to enjoy the other four. They're very similar in tone and style. And I actually do have a sort of follow-up sequel, Turning Darkness into Light, which features Isabella Trent's or the Lady Trent's granddaughter as the protagonist, and that's kind of all I know about it. So yeah, it's her granddaughter in the future, and presumably she has her own passion for dragons in some way, and she has her own mission to fulfill or mystery to solve. So I haven't read that yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and again, apologies for any weirdness in audio or video quality. I'm hoping to maybe get an external microphone to make this setup even better, but yeah, I guess, let me know how it looks, and thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you've read the first book, or if there are any other series involving dragons that you really love. Please let me know, because I still love dragons, and I would love to read more fantasy that is kind of focused around dragons, or where dragons play a huge part. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that it was of some help to you, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!